Hi, this is Heidi from Garden Crossings out in the greenhouse today, and I wanted to show you a little bit of what goes on once we are caught up with shipping. So it is end of May right now, and we're all caught up with shipping. So pretty much any orders that come in are shipped out within the next week after the order's been taken. We ship on Monday through Wednesday this time of year. So just to kind of throw that out there. Garden Crossings is a mail order company that ships all over the United States, as well as a retail garden center located in Zeeland, Michigan. So let's take a look at what the team's doing today. So in the greenhouse, we have a bunch of people out here. They're doing trimming and spacing. So when we get the plants in as plugs, they are all grown in the containers and put into the trays, all basically what we call pot tight. So 10 plants in a tray. What the team is doing right now is they're coming out here, giving the plants a haircut if a haircut is needed, and then they're spacing the plants all out so that they're 5 in a tray. So what that does is it allows for the plants to just have more space to grow and be able to, let's just say, breathe a little better because they're not put back in the trays so tightly. We're also filling in gaps, so you can see there's a lot of gaps here. So by going through and getting them trimmed and reset down, it's going to essentially fill the greenhouse sort of back up again. But in doing so, every plant is going to be spaced apart so that that's going to take up more space. Now here's an example of some plants they're trimming right now, and you can see how they're all nicely spaced apart. A bunch of different groups of people out here working right now. Here's a great example. This is some Broelia that's recently been trimmed. And doesn't that just look so nice, all those straight lines? And then we have some Infinity Impatiens, and you can just see by them being all spaced out as they continue to grow, they won't be growing on top of each other, they'll be growing in their own space. Some Impatiens. So some of the plants need more trimming than others. Some of them just need a really light trim. Others may need a more drastic trim. Just depends on how big that plant is out in the greenhouse. So the plants that are needing a light trim, they're ready to ship out next week. And some of the plants that need more of a drastic trim, it's going to be a few weeks before they're ready to ship out. We have several different groups of the same plants. So when we planted these originally in the spring, a lot of these plants were planted in 5 different weeks, so that we always had different plants coming ready at different points in the season. So if one block had to be trimmed back more significantly than another, there's plenty of other options for us to go to as far as looking for other choices of that same plant. The gals over there, they're trimming some Euphorbia, looks like probably Diamond Mountain. These gals here are trimming begonias. So as sad as it is, they are taking some of the flowers off, but by them trimming these plants, it's going to help branch them out, so that way once they get to your garden, there'll be a nice full plant ready to put on a show all summer long. Another thing we're doing, because we have the space now, is we're getting all of the hanging baskets and containers out of the ceiling and bringing them down to the floor. So some of those are needing to have a little trimming done on them as well. A lot of the plants that are still hanging in the ceiling, those are part of our landscape plants. So we grow our landscape plants in I think that's an 8-inch hanging basket. And then when we plant them outside, we have instant color because we want instant color when we put the annuals outside. Because we want the customers to see what the plants will look like in a mature state. So all of our landscape plants are planted in a 8-inch hanging basket, and then we use the auger to dig the hole, and then basically we can just drop them in the hole and have that beautiful landscape look going on. Let's go take a look at some of the other areas. One of the more tedious plants to come back here and maintain and clean up are the vines, because as they start to get taller and longer, they start intertangling with each other. So they're coming back here and twisting them to the stake, so that will keep them from intermingling with each other. And then obviously that's longer than the stake, so she's going to go ahead and nip that plant to about stake height. And when she's doing so, she's doing it right above where the leaves intersect. So now that plant is ready for shipping, and we'll quickly put on more new growth, but that just keeps them plants looking nicer. Here they have some that they've already started. And they're just setting them down. These two are getting spaced out just to give them a little bit more room in the greenhouse as well. Another important thing with summer cleanup is re-inventorying all the products. So we have gals out in the greenhouses once the plants have all been trimmed and set back down. There's people out here with computers, and they're going through and counting all the different plants within each location. All these little wooden sticks that you're seeing, these are location markers, or essentially like license plates. So the number tells us what plant it is, when it was planted, and they kind of go in order. So as the people are out here picking orders, they just look for the number and they know that that's the plant that they need for according to what they're looking for and picking. Recently we went through all of our gallon shrubs and got them all trimmed up and all relocated. So this area is looking packed full, but that's because these shrubs have come from several different areas and all put into this one space. So before all these shrubs were laid down, we came through and power washed all the floors. We took some bleach, or this mold armor deck fence and patio wash. We use that on all the floors to kill any of the algae and such that's growing. It also, the bleach kills anything on the floor that shouldn't be there. And then we go and we set all the plants back down again. So with these shrubs, again, it's a little bit variety dependent, but most of them have been trimmed back to about 8 to 10 inches. And the reason that's done, especially with shrubs, is the more trimming we can do on a shrub, the more branching that shrub will have. And the more branching, the end result is more flowers in the end. So these all trimmed up really nicely. Obviously, we don't trim evergreens like the tall thuyas, those don't get trimmed. But pretty much everything else will get trimmed back. The boxwoods and gem box, strong box, they all get trimmed and shaped. So we'll shape them into kind of a ball shape. And then when you get them in the landscape, if you want to shape them differently, you can. But they all nicely get trimmed up. Clematis all get retied onto their wooden trellises, trim back if there's any long vines that we don't want on there anymore. But just look how nice and clean this area looks. So much beautiful shrubs. Now I'm going to take you to an area that's not been cleaned up, and the reason why this area hasn't been cleaned is because we're actually going to be taking down a greenhouse. So let's head over there and take a look at what the before looks like. So this is a lean-to greenhouse, which basically means that it's like a half a greenhouse that just kind of leans over and goes to the ground. The plants are all grown here on this plastic, or it's not plastic, but on this ground mat. And a lot of what we were seeing in that other shrub area was a lot of this green algae on the ground. So this happens because you're watering with fertilizer water, and obviously fertilizer water is going to grow algae. So if this area was going to be reused to set more plants down, we would have come through with that deck bleach and bleached this whole area out, got rid of all this algae, swept all the dirt off before we set the plants down. But this space here is going to get removed and put into a new area in the greenhouse out in our, well, actually if you watch my videos, we this winter added about 4 greenhouses on, and this is going to be the last greenhouse that's going to finish that space off. So we're going to end it with a lean-to. And then we'll have here just basically our aisleway. So not a lot of shrubs will be able to get planted in this area next year. Maybe half of the space, because the other half is a tar runway for the traffic to go through. So this will definitely look different in future videos as we are reusing and repurposing greenhouses. Let's go take a look into the different area and see what else is going on maybe in our quart shrub houses. Now we're out in our kind of an overflow area, but pretty much most of the plants in this area are going to be our quart-size shrubs, along with flower pillows that we grow for proven winners, and then some of our vegetables, and then of course random other things because it's the overflow area. So let's take a look at what these girls are doing. Here's an example of more of the gallon shrubs that have all been trimmed and spaced out and counted, re-inventoried. Just got a shipment in of quart shrubs yesterday, so they're just going through this space and trimming. With the quart shrubs, I will point out, these quart shrubs, they get trimmed about every 2 weeks or so. So with the quart shrubs, they are going to arrive fairly short, but that's because we are always trimming on them. You might ask, well, why are you always trimming them? Just let them grow. Well, the reason is, like with the gallons, the more we trim on these shrubs, the more branching they're going to have. The more branching results in a fuller shrub, which also results in more flowers for you. So the more we can get these plants branched out and bulked up, the better off they're going to do for you once you're out in your landscape. So today she's working on a bunch of thuyas, it looks like. So obviously with thuyas, we're not doing any trimming on them at all. It's just pretty much, if there's any weeds or anything in the soil, they're removing the weeds, replacing it with fresh soil, and just making sure that these evergreen shrubs look good. So I do want to point out the evergreen shrubs, depending on the variety and how long we've had them here, they could be upwards of 18 inches tall. So we have some beautiful American Pillar right now. They're about 18 to 24 inches tall in the quart-sized container. Full Speed Ahead is another name for that. Some Spring Grove, some really tall Spring Grove. What else? North Poles. So they're all looking really good right now. So here's an example of the shrubs. She's going in and just trimming them back. So this has a lot of just singular branches that are out there. So she's just trimming them, and that way it helps bulk that plant up a little bit. Replacing some soil, because we do think it's important to have the containers filled to the top with the soil. Just going to take the next one. That's a nice looking shrub, but by her trimming it back, that's going to just help create even more branching, which in turn will lead to more flowers once it's planted. So that's just a small example of what is done with some of the shrubs. Here's a greenhouse that we've totally emptied out. So the next step in here is to come through with the floor wash and the power washer and just get this all tidied up and cleaned up and ready for our next round of planting. Hopefully you found this video interesting, just a little bit behind the scenes of what goes on this time of year. I guess the biggest thing I wanted to point out is just what we do here at Garden Crossings to make the plants look beautiful, and trimming is an important step in that process. So I think by showing you behind the scenes of how we're trimming, why we're trimming, and what the trimming does is a very valuable part of understanding when you get your plants and you see that they've been trimmed, why we're doing what we do. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I'd like to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for walking through the greenhouse with me today. This is Heidi from Garden Crossings.